Hey everyone! Welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Bold and Beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in.
In a shocking turn that rattled the foundations of Los Angeles, the truth about Luna's survival rippled through the city like a sonic blast, shaking every corner of the Forrester, Spencer, and Logan families, and leaving even the most stoic characters reeling in disbelief, for just when everyone thought Luna Nozawa had vanished forever in a haze of scandal, betrayal, and tragedy, she was revealed to be very much alive, breathing, vulnerable, clutching her unborn child as her wide, haunted eyes scanned the faces around her, searching for safety in a world where enemies lurked behind every smile, and it was in that precarious moment, with the truth-shattering illusions, that Katie Logan, usually the voice of reason and compassion, let her own fury spill over like molten lava, declaring in raw, unfiltered words that Luna had destroyed too many lives, broken too many hearts, hurt too many innocent people, and deserved nothing but the cold justice of death, leaving even Bill Spencer, long accustomed to Katie's steel backbone, stunned at the venom in her tone, while Sheila Carter, of all people, stood between Katie and Luna, her eyes flashing with a rage so volatile that the air itself seemed to quiver, as if the earth trembled beneath the weight of two women ready to explode, and Sheila's voice, guttural and sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the tension as she snarled that nobody, absolutely nobody, would harm Luna while she drew breath, for Sheila had clawed her way through the ashes of her past sins to protect the vulnerable, and in Luna she saw not only a broken girl but perhaps a sliver of her own redemption, a chance to be the shield instead of the dagger. But Katie would not yield, her lips curling into a bitter sneer as she accused Sheila of protecting evil simply because Luna carried Finn's bloodline, insisting that Luna was not a victim but a manipulator, a dangerous seductress who had twisted Will Spencer, tried to destroy Electra Forrester, and left a trail of wreckage that threatened to crush Steffi Forrester's family, and Katie, her voice trembling but fierce, warned that if Sheila couldn't do the right thing, then she, Katie Logan, would, and in that moment, the living room at Bill's estate transformed into a battlefield where words were bullets and stares were knives, as Sheila lunged forward, her whole body vibrating with fury, her hair wild, her eyes nearly feral, shouting that Katie had no right to decide who lived and died, because that power belonged only to fate, to life itself, not to a woman consumed by her misguided need to control, and the tension spiraled higher as Luna herself, fragile and pale, whispered hoarsely for them to stop, clutching her stomach protectively as if the tiny life within her could feel the thunder of war raging around her. But Katie's resolve didn't soften, not even at the sight of a trembling girl and her unborn child, for Katie believed in her bones that some lives brought nothing but destruction, and she wasn't willing to let her son will be tangled again in Luna's poisonous web. Yet what stunned the onlookers, Bill, Deke, even Brooke, who had entered midway and gasped at the spectacle, was Sheila's unwavering refusal to back down, her arms spread protectively in front of Luna, her voice breaking as she screamed that she knew what it meant to be judged, condemned, despised, but she wouldn't stand by and let it happen again to someone carrying her son's grandchild. And Katie, fists clenched, fired back that Sheila was nothing but a hypocrite, pretending at motherhood after decades of destruction, and now passing the torch of chaos to Luna, and their argument became a whirlwind of old wounds, Sheila snarling about the time she had been denied forgiveness, Katie retorting about all the victims left in Sheila's wake, and through it all, Bill stood silent, his jaw tight, his eyes cold, realizing that he had a choice to make: support Katie in her vengeful crusade or acknowledge Luna's right to live. And for the first time in years, Dollar Bill found himself paralyzed, unable to move, because his heart warred with his sense of justice, his instinct to protect while clashing with the undeniable truth that killing Luna, or allowing her to die, would make him no better than the enemies he fought. And it was in that moment of hesitation that Sheila struck, not with violence but with words that cracked open the very core of the Logan family dynamic, accusing Katie of being no better than her, for in her thirst for vengeance Katie had become judge, jury, and would-be executioner, and Katie's face twisted with fury as she screamed back that the difference was simple: Sheila had always been evil, but Katie would kill only to protect, and the house shook with the weight of that distinction, while outside, the night was eerily still, as though the universe itself held its breath, waiting to see who would break first. And Luna, sobbing now, begged them both to stop, her voice raw as she pleaded not for herself but for her baby, insisting that the child deserved a chance at life, a chance to grow up free from hatred and violence. And for one fleeting second, even Katie faltered, her eyes flickering to Luna's trembling form, but the reprieve was brief, for Katie quickly hardened again, whispering that the child might deserve a future but Luna did not, and Sheila erupted, screaming so loudly that her voice cracked, declaring that if Katie wanted Luna dead, she would have to go through her first, and everyone in the room froze, for this was Sheila Carter, legendary for violence, standing not as the aggressor but as the defender, a protector, ready to fight Katie Logan to the bitter end, and the tension ratcheted to an unbearable pitch as Bill finally barked out for them to stop, his voice booming, his authority reasserting itself. Yet even his command barely restrained the fire, for Katie and Sheila stood inches apart, both trembling with fury, their eyes locked in a deadly stalemate, the air between them charged like a storm about to break, and in that suspended moment, the storylines of past and present collided, Sheila's quest for redemption, Katie's fierce love for her family, Luna's desperate need for survival, creating a nexus of drama so volatile it threatened to consume them all, leaving everyone to wonder whether this clash would end in words or blood, in forgiveness or vengeance, and as the night dragged on, with whispers of destiny and doom in the shadows, the only certainty was that nothing, not one relationship, not one alliance, not one fragile bond, would ever be the same again. Because Luna's survival had resurrected not just a girl but every buried grudge, every unresolved betrayal, every unspeakable fear, and now the battle lines were drawn, not just between Katie and Sheila, but between the very concepts of mercy and justice, forgiveness and retribution, and in the end, the question hanging in the air like a blade was terrifying in its simplicity: would Luna live to see her child born, or would Katie Logan, driven by love, fear, and fury, be the one to ensure her life ended before redemption had a chance to take root? The storm did not end with Bill's barked command for order, it only shifted, deepened, and multiplied as the night pressed in against the mansion's windows like an accomplice to the chaos inside, because instead of dispersing, the emotions in that room thickened into a suffocating fog of accusation, mistrust, and the kind of raw fear that makes people say and do things they never thought themselves capable of. And while Katie Logan stood there with her fists clenched and her chest heaving, it was clear to everyone, Brooke, Bill, even Yundik watching wide-eyed from the doorway, that Katie had crossed into a place beyond reason, a place where grief and rage intertwined until mercy seemed like weakness, and Sheila, trembling with the ferocity of a cornered animal, had no choice but to meet her head-on, because for all of Sheila's history as a villain, in that moment she was the only wall between Luna and annihilation, her whole body vibrating as she snarled that she would not allow Katie to dictate who was worthy of life and who was not, and Katie, her eyes flashing with the kind of fury only a mother can summon, fired back that Sheila was blind, that she couldn't see Luna for what she truly was, a predator dressed in the clothes of a victim, a girl who had already destroyed Electra's innocence, shattered Will's heart, and wormed her way into Finn's family with manipulation and lies. And Katie's words were sharp as knives, stabbing at Luna's already battered spirit until the girl doubled over in sobs, clutching her stomach as if her unborn child might slip away from the sheer violence of the scene, and it was in that image, Luna, fragile and terrified, pleading for her baby, that the true fracture of the night emerged, for while Katie saw only a dangerous girl who had to be removed, Sheila saw a second chance at redemption, a way to rewrite her legacy by protecting the innocent, and Bill, caught between them, saw a nightmare with no escape, because no matter who he sided with, he would lose, his loyalty to Katie threatened by his reluctant compassion for Luna, his old fears of Sheila reawakened by the sight of her standing guard like some twisted guardian angel, and when Brooke finally stepped forward, her voice sharp but trembling, urging Katie to step back before she crossed a line she could never uncross, Katie spun on her sister with eyes that burned, spitting that Brooke had always been the soft one, the fool, the woman who forgave and forgave until men used her, broke her, and laughed behind her back, and Katie refused to be Brooke, refused to let mercy blind her to the truth that some people needed to be eliminated before they destroyed everything, but Sheila laughed then, a raw, manic laugh that rattled the chandeliers, mocking Katie for thinking she could play executioner, calling her a hypocrite wrapped in Logan's self-righteousness, and the room erupted again, everyone shouting at once, until Luna herself, trembling and pale, screamed for them to stop, her voice cracking into silence as she collapsed to her knees, one hand pressed to her stomach, terror flashing across her face as pain gripped her body, and in an instant the war of words fell away, replaced by panic as Bill and Brooke rushed forward, Sheila crouched at Luna's side, and Katie froze, torn between fury and the undeniable instinct to protect a life in danger, and Finn, summoned in frantic phone calls by Deke, arrived just in time to see his daughter crumpled on the floor, Sheila clutching her and begging him to save both mother and child, while Katie, standing rigid in the corner, whispered that maybe fate was intervening, maybe the problem was solving itself, and Finn's head snapped toward her with such venom in his glare that it silenced her mid-sentence, because in that moment he was not a doctor, not a husband, not a son, he was a father watching his child's life slip away. And Katie's words were poison, unforgivable, and the fracture Lines in the Logan Spencer Forrester Finnegan web cracked wider, threatening to split into chasms, because Finn carried Luna out in his arms, barking orders for an ambulance, while Sheila trailed behind, muttering prayers through her tears, and Bill dragged a trembling Katie aside, demanding to know what the hell had happened to her, how she could stand there and wish death on a girl and her baby, and Katie, sobbing now but unrepentant, insisted she was only protecting Will, protecting everyone. Because Luna's survival meant endless danger, but her words rang hollow against the image of Finn's raw grief, and as the sirens wailed in the distance, carrying Luna toward whatever fate awaited her at the hospital, the battle lines crystallized, Katie on one side, convinced she had done what was right by speaking the unspeakable, Sheila on the other, a woman long thought irredeemable now standing as Luna's fiercest defender. Bill caught in the middle, torn between loyalty to Katie and the gnawing dread that maybe, just maybe, Sheila was right this time, Brooke shaken to her core by her sister's descent into mercilessness, and Finn, barreling into the night, desperate to keep his daughter and grandchild alive, vowing that if anyone, Logan, Spencer, or otherwise, wanted Luna dead, they would have to go through him too, and with that vow the war was no longer just about Luna's survival but about the very soul of the families who had gathered in that living room, each of them forced to confront the question none dared ask out loud: when mercy and vengeance collide, which one deserves to win, and what pieces of themselves will be lost forever in the answer? The night bled into chaos as Luna was rushed into University Hospital, her body trembling with shock, her face pale as porcelain, her breath shallow and uneven, and Finn, striding alongside the gurney with his hands pressed firmly to hers, barked orders like a soldier on the battlefield, his voice sharp with a mix of terror and precision, because this was no ordinary patient, this was his daughter, his blood, his responsibility, and every second mattered, while Sheila Carter trailed just steps behind, her hair wild, her eyes brimming with manic fire, whispering prayers and curses in the same breath, demanding that the doctors move faster, that no one let her granddaughter die before she had a chance to take her first breath, and as they disappeared through the swinging doors of the emergency wing, Katie Logan stood frozen in the corridor, her face white, her hands trembling, her mind a battlefield between the part of her that still raged against Luna's existence and the part of her that recoiled in horror at the thought that she might have just wished death upon a girl and her unborn child, and Bill, pacing with his fists clenched, turned on Katie with venom in his voice, spitting that he barely recognized the woman standing in front of him, demanding to know when Katie had turned into someone who could wish death on a frightened young girl, but Katie's response was sharp and defensive, her tears burning as she insisted she was only protecting her son Will, that Luna had poisoned him, hurt him, left him broken, and that no amount of sympathy could erase the damage she had done, and Brooke, her heart breaking, begged Katie to stop, to hear herself, to realize that whatever Luna had done, she was still carrying an innocent life, a child who deserved a chance, but Katie's bitterness rose like bile as she snapped that Sheila's manipulation was working on all of them, that Luna was no victim but a cunning survivor who would twist their compassion until she destroyed them all, and Sheila, hearing every word from the far end of the hallway, spun around like a cyclone, her eyes wild, her voice booming as she tore into Katie with a venom that shook the walls, accusing her of playing God, of deciding who deserved to live or die, and Katie fired back, her voice rising into a shriek as she threw Sheila's past in her face, every shooting, every betrayal, every corpse left in her wake, spitting that Sheila had no right to stand there pretending to be a savior, and the hospital staff froze, the air between them electric with decades of hatred and fresh fury, while Finn, now suited in scrubs, burst back through the doors to demand silence, his face a mask of desperation as he revealed that Luna was in crisis, that her vitals were dropping, that the baby's heartbeat was faint, and that every ounce of his medical expertise would be needed to give them even a chance. And Sheila's knees buckled as she collapsed against the wall, whispering that she couldn't lose them, not when she had finally been given a chance to be a grandmother, not when her son's flesh and blood was lying on the edge of death, and Katie, her face stiff, muttered that maybe this was fate correcting itself, maybe this was the universe ending a cycle of pain before it began, and that was the moment Finn lost all control, rounding on Katie with a glare so fierce that even Bill stepped back, his voice breaking as he shouted that if Luna died, if the baby died, Katie would have to live forever with the knowledge that she had wished it into existence, and the hallway fell into stunned silence as Finn stormed back into the OR, leaving Katie trembling, Bill shaking his head in disgust, Brooke sobbing quietly, and Sheila pacing like a caged animal, muttering over and over that she wouldn't let history repeat itself, that she wouldn't lose this chance to be better, and inside the operating room, the scene was chaos, alarms shrieking, monitors flashing red, Lee Finnegan stepping in with her trademark icy authority to assist her son, Bridget Forrester arriving moments later to lend her expertise, and Grace Buckingham rushing down the hall after being paged, the three women forming a united front of surgical skill as they worked in tandem with Finn to stabilize both mother and child, and every decision was life or death, every movement measured in heartbeats, while outside, the waiting room became a crucible of tension, with Sheila pacing and praying, Bill brooding and clenching his fists, Brooke whispering comfort to Katie even as she struggled to comprehend her sister's rage, and Katie, staring at the double doors, haunted by the possibility that she might actually get what she had wished for, torn apart by the realization that if Luna and the baby died, she would be partly to blame in her own heart, even if no one else ever said it aloud. And the hours dragged on like centuries until finally, the doors swung open and Finn, sweat dripping down his temples, his scrubs soaked, stepped up to deliver the verdict, his voice hoarse but firm as he revealed that Luna had survived surgery, that the baby's heartbeat was steady but weak, that the fight wasn't over but there was hope, and Sheila broke into sobs of relief, collapsing to the floor with gratitude, while Katie, her face twisting, whispered that it wasn't fair, that it wasn't right, and Sheila, rising to her feet with renewed fire, pounced on Katie with words as sharp as any blade, screaming that if Katie wanted Luna dead, she would have to